The courtroom was silent in a way that felt unnatural, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Courtroom number 7 had seen murders, betrayals, and lies polished so well they almost passed for truth, but that morning, something felt heavier. The air itself carried a weight, like it already knew that by sunset, lives would be permanently altered. Judge Elliot Raymond Carter sat on the bench, his face carved with years of verdicts that had never truly left him. At 62, his hair was mostly silver, his eyes sharp but tired, eyes of a man who had sentenced criminals and freed innocents, yet still woke up some nights questioning whether justice was ever truly clean. "Bring in the defendant," the judge said, his voice steady, but quieter than usual. The side door opened. Daniel Cross stepped inside. He was 34, tall, thin, wearing a grey prison uniform that looked too large on his body, as if he had lost weight faster than the fabric could adjust. His wrists were cuffed, but his posture was straight. Not defiant. Not broken. Just calm. Too calm for a man accused of double homicide. Behind him sat his wife, Emily Cross, her hands trembling in her lap. She hadn't slept. No one needed to tell the court that. Her eyes were swollen, red, yet fixed only on Daniel, as if the rest of the world had disappeared. The clerk stood, case number 48291. State versus Daniel Cross. Charges, 2 counts of first-degree murder. A murmur passed through the gallery. Judge Carter raised his gavel once, not striking, just lifting it enough to command silence. "This court is now in session." The prosecution SPEAKS prosecutor Martin Hale rose slowly. He was confident, expensive suit, voice trained to sound reasonable even when delivering destruction. "Your Honor," he began, pacing slightly, "this case is simple. On the night of October 17th, at approximately 11:43 p.m., the defendant entered the residence of Mark and Olivia Bennett and murdered them in cold blood." Emily's breath caught. Hale continued. There was no forced entry. No sign of robbery. Only rage. And the defendant had motive. He turned toward the jury. Mark Bennett was Daniel Cross's business partner. 3 months before the murders, Mr. Bennett filed a lawsuit accusing the defendant of financial fraud. Their partnership collapsed. Threats were exchanged. Witnesses heard Daniel Cross say, and I quote, "I'll make sure you regret this for the rest of your life." Hale paused, letting the words sink in, and regret it they did. For the rest of their very short lives. A few jurors shifted uncomfortably. A defense's quiet BJNG defense attorney Laura Mendez stood next. She was younger than Hale, but her eyes carried a fire that had unsettled many prosecutors before. "This case is not simple," she said calmly. "It only looks simple if you ignore the facts that don't fit." She looked directly at Daniel for a brief moment, then back to the jury. Daniel Cross did not kill Mark and Olivia Bennett. He loved them. They were family. And by the time this trial ends, you will see that the real killer is someone the prosecution desperately wants you to overlook. Judge Carter leaned forward slightly. He had heard confidence before, but this felt different. "The first witness, call your first witness," the judge ordered. The prosecution called Detective Samuel Rhodes. Rhodes was experienced, respected, and tired. He took the oath and Saturday detective. Hale asked, "What did you find at the crime scene?" Rhodes cleared his throat. Both victims were found in the living room. Cause of death, multiple stab wounds. No signs of forced entry. A knife from the kitchen was used. And fingerprints. Daniel Cross's fingerprints were found on the knife. The courtroom stirred. Emily covered her mouth. Hale nodded. No further questions. Laura Mendez stood slowly. "Detective Rhodes," she said, "did you also find other fingerprints on the knife?" Rhodes hesitated. "Yes. Partial prints. Belonging to. We couldn't identify them conclusively. But they were not Daniel Cross's." "No." Laura turned to the jury. "Thank you. And one more question, Detective. Did you find any blood on Daniel Cross's clothes when he was arrested?" Rhodes swallowed. "No." A ripple moved through the courtroom. "No blood," Laura repeated softly, "despite a brutal double stabbing." Hale objected. Argumentative. "Sustained," Judge Carter said, but his eyes stayed on the detective. Laura nodded. No further questions. Judges first DUBT Judge Carter leaned back in his chair to NO blood. Partial fingerprints. No forced entry. He had learned long ago that cases rarely broke open in the first hour, but they often whispered early truths to those willing to listen. He looked at Daniel. The man's face showed pain, yes, but not guilt. And Judge Carter trusted his instincts less than the law, but he never ignored them. A wife's testimony. Call Emily Cross, Laura said. Emily stood, shaking, and walked to the stand. Mrs. Cross, Laura said gently, where was your husband on the night of October 17th? Emily swallowed. With me. At home. We argued earlier, but he never left. Hale rose instantly. Objection. Biased witness. Overruled, Judge Carter replied. Continue. Emily's voice cracked. Daniel loved Mark like a brother. He was angry about the lawsuit, yes, but he was planning to settle. He said fighting would destroy everyone. Laura nodded slowly. Did your husband ever threaten to kill them? Never, Emily whispered. Never. Hale approached for cross-examination. Mrs. Cross, he said smoothly, did your husband come to bed that night at any point? Emily froze. I don't remember exactly. Hale leaned closer. Because grief clouds memory. Or because he wasn't there. Emily broke down crying. Judge Carter struck the gavel. Enough. The courtroom reconvened after a short recess, but whatever calmed the break was supposed to bring never arrived. The jurors returned quieter than before, their eyes heavier, their thoughts louder. Some avoided looking at Daniel Cross. Others couldn't stop. Judge Elliot Carter took his seat again, his fingers resting on the bench longer than usual. He had reviewed thousands of cases in his lifetime, but something about this one refused to sit still in his mind. Like a splinter that couldn't be pulled out. Court is back in session, he announced. The surveillance agent prosecutor Martin Hale stood again, confidence restored. Your Honor, he said, the state would like to introduce surveillance footage obtained from a gas station 3 blocks from a victim's residence. Laura Mendez's eyes sharpened. Hale continued. This footage shows the defendant's vehicle passing the station at 11:21 p.m., 22 minutes before the estimated time of death. A murmur spread across the room like wildfire. Play the footage, Judge Carter ordered. The screen flickered to life. A grainy black and white video appeared. A sedan rolled past the gas station. The timestamp blinked, 11:21 p.m. That's his car, someone whispered. Emily's hand shook uncontrollably. Hale turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Cross claimed he never left his house. But the camera does not lie. Laura stood immediately. Objection. We have not established that the defendant was driving the vehicle. Hale smiled slightly. We will. Judge Carter nodded. Proceed. The key witness the prosecution called Anthony Miller, the gas station attendant. Miller took the stand, nervous but firm. Mr. Miller, Hale asked, do you recognize the man who drove that vehicle? Miller pointed. Yes. That's him. Daniel didn't flinch. Emily gasped. Hale nodded. How certain are you? Very. I remember his face. He came in to buy cigarettes. Laura rose slowly, like a predator choosing the perfect moment. Mr. Miller, she said, how many customers do you see every night? A lot. And this happened over 4 months ago. Yes. You didn't mention cigarettes in your original statement, did you? Miller hesitated. I don't think so. Laura leaned in. Because that detail was added after police interviewed you again. Correct. Silence. Judge Carter's eyes narrowed. Maybe, Miller stammered. Laura nodded calmly. No further questions. The damage was done to judges. Judge Carter leaned back, his mind drifting against his will. Years ago, he had presided over a similar case. Surveillance footage. Confident witnesses. A man sentenced to life. 6 years later, DNA proved the man innocent. Judge Carter had signed that verdict. The memory burned. The defense strikes. BC Laura stood again. The defense calls Dr. Henry Wallace, forensic analyst. Dr. Wallace adjusted his glasses. The knife contained mixed DNA. And does that DNA conclusively belong to Daniel Cross? No, could the fingerprints have been planted? Hale objected immediately. Speculation. Judge Carter paused, then overruled. Dr. Wallace nodded. Yes, it's possible. The courtroom went still. Laura let the silence breathe. And one more thing, she added. Did you analyze the time of death again after reviewing body temperature logs? Yes. And? There is a possible margin of error of up to 45 minutes. Hale stiffened, so the murders could have happened after the defendant's car returned home. Yes. Emily burst into tears. This time of hope dot a crack into her, and Hale requested a sidebar. Judge Carter listened quietly, his face unreadable. After a long moment, he shook his head. Denied. Hale returned to his seat, jaw tight. For the first time, the jury saw something else behind his confidence. Feared the unexpected testimony, Your Honor, Laura said. The defense calls Detective Samuel Rhodes again. Rhodes returned to the stand, visibly uncomfortable. Detective, Laura said. Did you receive instructions from anyone to focus solely on Daniel Cross as the suspect? Rhodes swallowed. Answer the question, Judge Carter said firmly. Yes, Rhodes admitted. I was told to close the case quickly. By whom? Rhodes looked toward the prosecution table, then down, the district attorney's office. The courtroom erupted. Order. Judge Carter slammed the gavel. Hale stood. This is outrageous. Sit down, the judge snapped. Rhodes continued quietly. There was pressure. A public outcry. The Bennetts were influential. Judge Carter's hands clenched. He knew that pressure well. The shadow figure Laura's voice dropped. Detective, did you investigate Evan Bennett? Hale's head snapped up. Evan Bennett. Judge Carter repeated. Who is that? Rhodes exhaled. Mark Bennett's younger brother. And where was Evan on the night of the murders? We never confirmed. Laura turned to the jury. Because Evan Bennett stood to inherit $3 million if his brother died. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Judge Carter felt something shift deep in his chest. The case was no longer about Daniel Cross. It was about everything that had been ignored. The courtroom doors opened slowly, and every sound inside seemed to die the moment Evan Bennett walked in. He did not look like a grieving brother. He looked like a man who had prepared for war. Evan was 39, broad-shouldered, wearing a tailored black suit that screamed money rather than mourning. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and when they briefly met Daniel Cross's, something flickered, not anger, not sadness, recognition. Judge Elliot Carter felt it immediately. This was not a witness. This was a storm. The brother takes the stand. Raise your right hand, the clerk said. Evan swore the oath smoothly, like a man accustomed to legal language. Laura Mendez stood. Mr. Bennett, when was the last time you spoke to your brother Mark? The morning of his death, Evan replied without hesitation. And what was the nature of that conversation? Evan smiled thinly. Business. Mark was stressed. Daniel Cross was ruining him. Daniel closed his eyes. Laura nodded. Did you go to your brother's house that night? No. Did you speak to him after 8 p.m.? No. Laura stepped closer. Are you aware that you inherited $3 million after your brother's death? Hale jumped up. Objection. Judge Carter didn't hesitate. Overruled. Evan exhaled slowly. Yes, that was his estate plan. And did you know that his life insurance policy was changed 3 weeks before his death, naming you as the sole beneficiary? The courtroom exploded into whispers. Evan's jaw tightened for the first time. Laura raised her phone. Your Honor, the defense would like to introduce a voicemail retrieved from Mark Bennett's private cloud account. Hale shook his head. We were never provided. Judge Carter cut him off. Play it. The recording crackled. Then Mark Bennett's voice filled the room, shaky, frightened. Evan, please stop. You're scaring Olivia. If you come here again, I'll call the police. This money isn't worth blood. Emily covered her mouth. Daniel stared in disbelief. The room froze. Judge Carter felt his pulse spike. Mr. Bennett, Laura said quietly, why did your brother sound afraid of you? Evan swallowed. Family arguments happen. Laura nodded. Yes, but threats don't happen without reason. Judges that night, Judge Carter couldn't sleep till he sat alone in his chambers, staring at an old frame photograph, himself, younger, standing beside his late wife. She had believed justice was sacred. If you ever stop questioning yourself, she had once told him, you'll become dangerous. He rubbed his temples. Had he become dangerous? The breaking point the next morning, court resumed under tension thick enough to choke. Laura called her final witness, Detective Rhodes. Did you recover any footage from the Bennett's neighborhood? Yes, Rhodes said. But it was corrupted. Laura's eyes locked on him. Recovered later. Rhodes hesitated. Judge Carter leaned forward. Answer. Yes. And what did it show? Rhodes closed his eyes. A man entering the house at 12:06 a.m. Hale stood abruptly. Your Honor, sit. Down. Judge Carter commanded. Laura's voice was steady. And was that man Daniel Cross? No, who was it? Rhodes looked straight at Evan Bennett. The courtroom erupted. Emily screamed. Daniel collapsed into his chair. Evan stood instinctively, then froze. Judge Carter stood as well. Bailiff, he said coldly, do not let anyone leave. The ARREST police officers moved in. Evan backed away. This is insane. Evan Bennett, Judge Carter said, his voice shaking with controlled fury. You are hereby remanded into custody pending further investigation for the murders of Mark and Olivia Bennett. Evan's mask shattered. You think this ends here? He shouted as he was cuffed. You have no idea what you've done. Judge Carter watched him leave and felt no victory, only sorrow at the confession that no one expec's court adjourned. Daniel Cross remained seated. Laura approached him. Daniel, we won. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, he whispered. We didn't. Judge Carter paused mid-step. What do you mean? Laura asked. Daniel looked up, eyes flooded with pain. I went to their house that night. Silence. I didn't kill them, Daniel said. But I was there. And I left, because I was afraid. Judge Carter closed his eyes. The truth had one final price.